Check, check, quick sound check. Can everybody hear me loud and clear? Let me know if you can hear me, see me. Hopefully everybody had a good week this week. It is Friday. Happy Friday, everybody. Thank you for hanging out. We'll go ahead and get started in just a few minutes, but let me know in the chat how your day ended up. Were you up on the day, down in the day, maybe up on the week? If you passed the combine this week, were able to take some payouts. So, we had some pretty high number of payouts in Topstep accounts this week. So if you were a part of that, let us know in the chat if you were able to take some payouts. Tachi, what's going on? Gabriel, all good. My audio's a little low. Should be better now. Just turn the gain up. Audio should be better now. Life could be a dream. Welcome. Kim, good day today. Awesome, thanks, Pete. Up on the week on my 150K trading combine. Gabriel, nice job. Nice job. I like to see people trading combines over the course of a couple weeks, right? Where it's not just, hey, I'm trying to pass it in 2 days. If you guys can do that, just don't rush the process, and whatever time it takes to get through it. This is about consistency and consistency over time, really. If you weren't running with the bulls this week, you missed out. Justin, yeah, that's a good point. The markets, the buy program might be back on, right? We're not too far from all-time highs now in the ES and in the NASDAQ. Hey, Allison. Committed to myself to pass 100K combine trading only 1 micro. Wow. Okay. That's awesome, Andrew. How far along are you? Today was day 4 of my XFA. All days green for Yip. Hoping to start your first combine next week, Kim. Awesome. What's going on, Chris? Joel. Trying to pass too fast has plagued you. Yeah, there's no rush, right? There's no rush. Sometimes if we try to go too fast, it just slows us down. So caught 3K in cattle today, Douglas. Nice. I just called it out because it was, you guys are hearing me talk all the time about, hey, there's top percentage movers on this list. That's why, right? It presents an opportunity. It might not even be a market you traded before, but it's presenting an opportunity. It's trading a wide range. And then if you can analyze the charts, you can take advantage of that opportunity. So let's go ahead and get into it. If this is our first time meeting, I am Coach Jay. I've been a Topstep Performance Coach for a little over a year. We've been doing this at the Buzzer class in Discord. We just moved it over to YouTube this week. So if you've been with me all week, thank you for joining. Really do appreciate it, and appreciate Topstep, giving us the opportunity to extend this programming. The goal of this segment is to review what happened in the markets for the day. We may talk about some markets that you have not traded before. We are going to cover the 4 major markets that are traded at Topstep, NASDAQ, ES, crude oil, gold. But sometimes, like Douglas just said, he made 3K in cattle. Sometimes there's movement in other markets, and we may point those out as well. There was a decent amount on the news today. I think the biggest thing that I saw was this housing starts number. Housing starts, the lowest that they've been in the last 4 years. What was expected was 1.38 million, and the number that we got was 1.23 million, a 5% miss on what was forecast. What was forecast was 1.5%. What was actual was 6.8% month over month, and that's the lowest that we've seen it in the last 4 years, and that can be attributed to mortgage rates. So what's going on, Spark? That was the biggest news. We did have Michigan sentiment as well coming out better than expected. Forecast was 66.9. What was the actual was 67.8. We didn't see too much of a strong reaction to either of those numbers. But let's get into the markets. So because it is the end of the week, I want to go over a little bit of a weekly review. I forgot who said it in the chat, but you are right. If you were a bull this week, you were very happy. Looking at the ES to start, and we'll go through the week on the ES, and then we'll get down to what happened today. But if I look, the ES started this week right around 53.72. and we closed about 4.5%, about 4% up. Actually, is that right? Nope, 53.64 we opened up the week, and we closed, there we go, right around 4.5% up, which is a really nice move, right? We talked about this strong down move that we had over the last 2 weeks, and maybe this being a short covering rally, but after yesterday, it doesn't look like that anymore, right? It looks like buyers are stepping back into these markets, even if they're doing it slowly. We are approaching all-time highs, so we may see some expedited moves, but we're not far off, right? Right now, we are less than 100 points away from the all-time high in the ES, and right now the daily ATR is about 118 points. So that's just one outlier day away from an all-time high, going into next week where it looks like buyers are stepping back into these markets. We'll go down to a 30-minute chart, and I'm going to pull up our moving averages. 3 moving averages that I'm going to share are the 20, the 50, and the 200 moving average. Shout out to Coach Paul for those. That's where I started using them from. I had different moving average numbers until I started doing this session with Coach Paul, who should be joining us next week. But it's something that he said he uses all the time, so decided to take a look at it and see how the markets respond to them. I think that's what I really would like this session to be. Obviously, we're not calling out any trade ideas. Anything we say is for educational and entertainment purposes only. But there's a lot to learn, right? There's a lot to learn from each other. There's a lot to learn from the chat. I'm learning from Coach Paul. He's learning from me. We're all learning from each other, kind of doing this. So this 20, 50, 200 moving average on the 30-minute, we talked about this yesterday, being a pretty sharp angle upwards. Somewhat of a balanced day today, right, where we didn't get that continuation of the trend that we were looking for. But this 54 or 5600 level, major psych level in the ES, and not surprised at a little bit of hesitation around these major numbers. Hayes Records trying to trade the close on OPEX. Yeah, that's tough. That is a tough endeavor. Tough endeavor to try to trade OPEX closes where we're going to see a bunch of wild action, and that's why you see the guys doing the reversal challenge instead of actually trying to put on trades at that point. Also, it's Friday, it's late. A lot of people are just kind of checked out. So how solid are those trading decisions? That's how I think for myself, at least. So if you've been here all week, you kind of know how I would approach the housing starts number that we had. So we're just going to do the same thing. We did it with what other news did we have out this week, right? We had PPI, we had CPI, and now we have this housing starts number. And it's, again, still providing pretty good opportunities, at least for areas of interest in these markets, right? The number came out 7:30 Central. The high, and these are on a 3-minute chart, but depending on what time frame you trade, it might be a little bit different. But the high of the candle, 55.51, and the low 55.42. If anyone remembers, yesterday we had this pivot down here. It was a sell side imbalance on the daily levels, and Coach Paul had it as a pivot in the ES 55.35. We checked down pretty much exactly to that level. We got within 2 points of it, and really nice area of opportunity. And I'm mentioning that because of the Topstep daily levels. We have this website that gets updated every day. And it's the levels that our coaches are looking at for areas of opportunity. Now, these are not signals to say, hey, you should buy here, you should sell here. You're going to make that decision on your own. But they're areas of interest, at least, to look at, right? And then we do have the Topstep levels indicator on Topstep X as well, which I would suggest, having up. Maybe if you don't like to clutter your charts, at least, having them on there. You can, remove them if you want, but see if the market's responding to them. With that being said, we had that print, and then we have, I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to anchor a VWAP to it. Right, so we see the market traded a little bit lower than that print above this pivot that we had, but that anchored VWAP never left the range to the low. The sellers were done at this point. for the day. We have the, give me one second. Bear with me one second. Rectangle, that's what I'm looking for. All right. We have the 3-minute opening range here, and then I'm going to anchor one more VWAP to that, and we see the same thing, right? The high of this news candle starts to act as a support. I was on Fast Markets this morning dealing with some audio issues and was trying to call out to the team, hey, this 55.51 level is where I think we should be buying for that reason. The opening range left that news range. We start to hold it as a support, and it looked like a pretty good trade. Did I know that it was going to push up 20 points in an hour and 45 minutes? I didn't, and I also want to be conscious of that Michigan sentiment number that we have coming out. But this was a good trade location to start targeting some of these highs. 55.83 was the overnight high. So looking up towards that level was a reasonable trade, in my opinion. We eventually did get there. I think we just had a little restart on Topstep X. We eventually did get up there. It took a little while, but the market trended in that direction all day, kind of similar to what we've seen for the rest of the week, where it's this low volume kind of grind up, which is hard to short. We ended up taking a trade, 55.64 in the house account. And we had the right idea, right? And I think if I had to do trade review, what I would write in my journal is you can get the direction right. Just trade location is important, right? Where our entry was 55.64, we would have had to, have at least space for a 12-point drawdown before the market went in our favor. But I don't think it wasn't a bad trade, right? It was not a bad trade at all. Close to volume, like we talked about, right? We weren't far away from view up. But look at what we do. We come back, check that 55.51 level one more time. The market again says, hey, no, I'm done with those prices. Let's go up. And then that set the low for the rest of the day, where we then just continued to trend up. The one thing I want to point out here is this candle that is at 10:48 or 9:48 Central Time, right? 9:48 Central Time candle. And the volume in this candle, right? We talked about this a little bit before, but that heavy selling into a demand area and the market cannot push lower if you don't, and this is I'm kind of giving you guys my trade playbook, but this looks like seller exhaustion. The sellers failed to push prices lower into this reaction that we had from the news. You could either try to take the trade right there from that 55.51 area, but what I really like to see is once we close outside of that candle, right? Once we get a candle close outside of this, we can consider this candle here, right? It did close out of it. This is 10:06 Central Time. That candle closed outside of it. What this is telling me is that the market is trying to go higher, right? Whether or not it's going to succeed at doing it is yet to be seen, right? We don't get to see the markets like this. We see it here. But once I see a close outside of this range, I'm thinking about, hey, can I buy it and then risk the lows of the candle? If I bought it at that high and risked the low, I'm risking about 10 points on the ES, which I think is a reasonable stop. But once we get that close outside, we can see we traded to about 50% of that candle, right? This 50% retracement holds, and kind of off to the races. Those closes outside, that candle starts to act as a support, and we just trend up for the rest of the day until lunchtime is over, and then we just chop around in a decent range. So really nice day in the ES. I think it provided opportunity for both sides. Early on, there was a better opportunity for these shorts around 55.70, where during that fast market session, we weren't seeing really any initiative moves at all, right, to the buy side or the sell side. So when we kind of floated up to 55.70, which looked like a prior support slash resistance area of opportunity. Gave you a pretty good cheap short there. All right. And that is about it. I'm going to just check on the chat real quick. Can I explain my fib settings? So for me, Steven, my fibs are very simple. Here they are. I just have 0, 50%, and 100%. I know there are other fib levels that you can use. I don't use them. I just haven't measured them in my own trading. But if you have, go ahead and use them. I know a bunch of traders use them. Anne Marie was talking about fibs today. So they can be useful. I just don't use them in my trading. All right. What time do those levels update? So the Topstep daily levels update right around 8 Central, right? Right around 8 Central, those are going to update. The coaches, some of the coaches are putting their levels in overnight. I'm usually putting mine in sometime in the morning, and then they get updated right around 8 o'clock Central time. All right. Let's see what else we got in the chat. What is the point of having a combine? To get funded, right? You prove that you can trade and then get funded by Topstep. The delta on Quantower. Casa, I don't have Quantower up, but actually, hold on, I do have it up. It's on the side. I'm not gonna pull it up on the screen, but the delta for that candle, right? And we're talking about the candle that was 9:48 Central Time. That delta was negative 881. Negative 881 delta. So a lot of selling came in there. That selling got absorbed, and we got that close outside, and that was it. When am I dropping the Quantower setup video? So I sent one into the creative team. I think I might have to make some adjustments to it, but we do have one. It is out there. We'll work on getting that onto the Topstep page, because I think it's a pretty good one, especially if you have Quantower, kind of the setup that we have. So I will check up on that next week, and then I'll have an update for you. But thanks for asking. Do I use point of control in the volume profile? I don't really. A lot of what you see for my trading decisions is exactly what I'm showing you now. Where does volume come in? I do like volume profile. I do have in Quantower instead of the normal volume profile, I have a delta volume profile. And I'll look at that delta point of control often, but I know Coach Ray uses it a lot. And points of control are, a lot of times what you'll see is that volume point of control lines up with another level for some reason. And why that is because a lot of volume had to interact at that level. So they're going to be in important spots. Are there any rules about how often to trade the XFA? No rules. You just got to trade between the allotted times for Topstep. All that information is on the website. Really, the only rule is, don't hit your max loss limit. I do trade on Fridays, Myra. I was trading during fast markets today. Obviously, the markets are closed right now, so we're just doing a little bit of a review, but I do trade on Fridays. I was having some issues with audio this morning, or I think I would have taken that 55-51 long, but it's good to see the trade play out. We'll go over to the NASDAQ real quick. Pretty much the same idea in the NASDAQ. Often the ES and the NASDAQ are going to mirror each other. The one thing, I've adjusted my trading recently and been trading the ES a lot more just because it respects levels better than the NASDAQ does. But we have that news candle in the NASDAQ, and once we get a close outside of it, the close happened at 8:39 Eastern. We can start to use the bottom of that candle as your risk limiter, right? It's pretty expensive. 48. This is a 48-point candle. So if you're risking the entire candle with a one lot on the NASDAQ, that's about $950, right? How can you mitigate that risk? Trade micros, right? You can trade micros. You don't have to trade the minis. if that's expensive, because it can be, right? $950 on a 50K combine, that's your full daily loss limit. You do that twice, and you're resetting the account, which we want to try to avoid as much as possible, because we want to be taking money out of the markets. So those two candles, we have the news candle, housing start candle, and then the Michigan sentiment candle. We'll frame that one out. I'll make that one purple. And then the same idea, right? We got this volume push into the housing starts candle. The market could not close inside that candle, but honestly, this is why I like the ES a little bit better. But if you trade the NASDAQ, you're accustomed to these swings. We also had that 19,500 level. So there's a lot going on here, right? We have housing starts. We got a major level of 19,500 in this as well. But we're not seeing sellers being able to push the price lower than that 19,500. And then we grind up. Zoom out a little bit on the NASDAQ. Let's look at a weekly and just see what we did for the week. Again, an up move as well. The ES was 4.5% up. The NASDAQ was about 6% up. So about a 6% move in the NASDAQ this week, just over 1,100 points, which is pretty awesome, right? The buyers are back. We are about 1,300 points away from an all-time high, that 21,000 level. We still got to get above 20,000, which is going to be a major level as well. But it looks like the buyers, at least for now, are back. Moving averages tell the same story on the 30-minute, well above the 200, the 20 and the 50, well above the 200 moving average. A little bit of balance today, but these markets look like they're starting to trend up. NQ is weaker, yeah, at points, right? So early in the session, it looked like the NASDAQ was going to lead, and then it looked like the ES took the lead. I don't think either one of them really wanted to do it. It was kind of reluctant on both sides, but eventually they both figured it out. Instead of trading ES, have you thought about scaling in and out from 5 ES at a time? So Hayes Records, yeah, I'll trade the micros as well. I feel like that scale back that you're talking about is the change that I made from trading the NASDAQ to the ES, right? Where I'm a lot more comfortable with those P&L swings in the ES. How to interpret best use of the DOM? Good question. So the way I use the DOM, I'm going to scan it for big orders. So you'll see at 19,620 here in the ES, in the NASDAQ, there's a 30 lot there. And then normally with my DOM, I have a time and sales also. So when we approach these levels, 19,620, I want to see how the market responds to them, and then trade it from there, right? So a lot of times what we'll see, especially in the ES, the market attracts towards this big liquidity, right? So we see a 500 lot, we see a 1,000 lot. We'll see the market magnet towards it, and then either fill it or run away from it, right? So you want to watch more than just saying, oh, hey, there's a big order out there. You want to watch the market's reaction to those orders, because then that's going to give you information about how the market wants to trade. How do you find me on X? I'm not on X. Maybe I'll get on X. I'll create a Coach J profile, but right now, no social media. Only TopstepTV. Andrew said, to quote NQ, levels, we don't need no stinking levels. Yeah, I mean, the NASDAQ just does not respect levels as well as the ES does. And that's great for volatility, but you also have to take that into account with where your stops are. All right. Let's see. I realized I didn't go over the top percentage movers. So before we get into gold and crude oil, let's do that. So to the downside, we have heating oil down 1.9%, lean hogs down 1.9%. And very interesting with lean hogs, it was the top percentage mover to the upside yesterday, right? We had a 4% move to the upside, almost a 2% move to the downside today. I'll say it all the time, just even if you don't trade those markets, just look at them, take a look at them, right? Where, and if you're going to trade it in a practice account to start, if it's something that you have not traded before. But there's opportunity, right? Just like any other market, if the NASDAQ was up 4%, we're expecting somewhat of a retracement. We got the same thing in the hogs today. So lean hogs down 1.9%, and then nat gas down 3.19% for our biggest percentage mover to the downside. And then to the upside, we have gold. Gold up 2.17%. Gold making a new all-time high today. I think closing at the highest that it has closed. And then the cryptos, micro Ether, micro Bitcoin. Ether 2.86%, Bitcoin 4.2% for our biggest percentage mover to the upside. Did I ever trade the hogs after you called it out this morning? Linus Rain, I didn't. I was focusing on trying to trade the ES, and then in my personal account, I was having some data issues, so trying to figure that out. But it was a great trade. It was a great trade. Hey, Francis, what's going on? 10 trading, I see you there. Thanks for joining us, Francis. Yeah, man, that level you called out in the NASDAQ yesterday was a fire level. In power hour, we bounced right off of it. Really nice call. And that's, like you said, 3 for 3 on power hour. So I think we need to get you on one of those levels teams because you know what you're looking at, man. Thanks for joining. How long have I traded? I've been trading for 11 years now. Did I start prop firm? I started with my own money, and then started prop firms about 2 years ago. All right, let's get into gold then, since gold did make new all-time highs, and it really just rallied. Really just rallied. Let's look at gold. Let's go to a 30-minute first. And I'm going to pull the moving averages up. So we've been talking about gold being in a little bit of balance over the last 3 days or so, trying to figure out exactly what it's going to do with this 2,500 level, right? It traded above it, traded below it. But the one thing we did see is that this 200 moving average is still kind of leaning towards the upside, and the 20 and the 50 never really sold off below. It looked under it, but never really started to trend lower, and the 20 always stayed above the 50. Again, shout out to Coach Paul for those moving averages. But, you know, the buyers are here in gold. We talked about it. It's either going to sell off under 2,500 or we're going to make new all-time highs. We can't stay in this range forever. And today, whatever happened in the markets, gold liked it, and it looks like that housing starts number started it, or whatever news came out at 7:30 Central. There was housing starts. There was a bunch of other stuff as well. That started the move, right? That's when we made our all-time high. But let's go to the session open, Globex session open, which is 5 p.m. Central Time. I'm going to frame out that candle, and we'll do an anchored VWAP to that. What time is it? Just checking on time. So we chopped around a little bit in that Globex range. There must have been something in Asia that came out that we see this volume spike on the 30-minute in gold. Right, this is 2:30 Central Time now that we're seeing this pretty big candle in gold, volume stepping in here. We'll go down to a 3-minute chart to see if that was 1 or 2. Yep. So as soon as not the Asian session, the London session open, there was some volume coming in on gold here. I didn't check Deanna this morning for the London open, but I wonder if she was trading copper at this time as well. But a really nice trend, just consistent buying. The previous all-time high was 25.22, right? 25.22.6 was the previous all-time high. And then you may have heard Dakota and I talking about, and he took the trade, so really nice trade, Dakota. But he took that trade when we pulled back to that previous all-time high, which, you know, these are levels that you can put on your charts. Think about it. Anyone who's trading gold knows that, hey, that was the last all-time high. So when we come back to it, if I'm a buyer, I'm going to continue to push the market above these levels, right? So we trade above it, you know, after the news reaction and the open for gold. Gold does open a little bit earlier than the equities, right? Gold opens at 7:20 Central Time. But we trade above it, come back, use it as a support, have a really nice bounce off of it, right? This is a 15-point trade, but we come back to it. We come back, check that level again, another nice bounce, and then the real nice bounce is the one that, we see this heavy selling come in, similar to what we saw in the ES, but this one checks VWAP, right? This VWAP is anchored from the Globex session open. That selling comes down, checks that VWAP, and sellers they got absorbed, right? They met buyers right at that VWAP. Once we get a close outside that candle, same idea. Can we risk the lows of it if we didn't take the trade at the low right now? So taking this trade down here is going to improve your risk to reward, but maybe a lower probability because you're going against the selling that's coming in. Taking the trade up here decreases that risk to reward, right? Because you gave up some of the move already, but you have a confirmation that the market is actually trying to go in this direction. So you have to make that decision in your own trading, which one you're more comfortable with. But then just a really nice trend. This looks like what the equities look like in the beginning of the week, where there's not a pullback in sight once we started to break out. Kind of slow grind up. We're getting 4-point, 5-point pullbacks and just a grind up the rest of the day. So it will be interesting to see what happens in gold. Of course, what's the next major level up above? We're in uncharted territories, literally. So 2600 is not far away. So that has to be the next magnet in my mind. Now, how does gold get there? It may pull back. It may continue to go. It looks like it's ready to start the beginning of a trend. So we may have some more nice moves in gold to that upside. And Francis, I see you got to go, but thank you for joining, man. Had a couple good pullbacks to get in today. Yeah, the pullbacks were decent in gold, right? They're 4 or 5 points, and that's all they were really providing. But if you trusted that trend, here's the 3-minute with those moving averages. If you trusted that trend, you could just keep on buying it. JC, you were trying to move your charts, trying to move the charts thinking it was my screen. Coco, what's going on? All right. Let's see if I got any more questions here. How to identify, estimate if institution involved, maybe big jumps. So Lee, you're trying to estimate and trying to figure out or identify whether or not institutions are involved. What I would say to that is anytime you see big volume, just imagine or just assume that it is an institution of some sort, right? We don't see big volume get traded if big money isn't behind it. Now, I don't think we necessarily need to know exactly who's behind that position, but big volume, right? Anytime you see any big volume spikes, I'm going to go with the assumption that there is a big money player behind that position. Now, there are ways to try to figure out what their intentions are. We're not going to get into that here. There are some classes in the Topstep Discord that I did about volume analysis if you want to check those out. But that's how I'm going to do it, right? Find areas where big volume gets executed. There's an institution there. Goldman. It could be Goldman. All right. That's really all I had on gold. Let's see what happens. 2550 right above where we're closing. And then obviously 2600 not too far away. And then let's go to crude oil and then we will get out of here. Crude oil. Crude did roll over. So we're trading the V contract now. And it rolled over and just sold off. As soon as that rollover was over, they were done and just sold it. We do have this data gap here for the rollover, but here is the Globex session open at 5 p.m. Central Time. The high of that range is $77. The low is $76.68. And again, if we anchor VWAP there, sellers were in control all day. and they really sold it in the London session. Not sure if there was news that came out then, but they really sold it in the London session. By the time it got to, us trading it in the New York session, if you trade the New York session, I know we have traders all over, but by the time it got to the New York session, crude oil kind of just consolidated. So if you're a range-bound trader, maybe this is the range that you like to trade, but the trend happened overnight. Still a decent range to trade. We had about a full dollar range during the New York session, so there was opportunity at those extremes, the high being $76, the low being around 75. That range did contract over time, but again, crude oil was one of our biggest percentage movers down. Not the top three, but a 1.8% move down today. And I think at one point, crude was down about 3%. So really big move after that rollover. And, we checked above $80, that $80 level on the August contract earlier in the week. We know that move was expedited by the news. I haven't heard of any escalation, so maybe that's why we're cooling off a little bit. And crude may go into balance. We're going to have this gap on the Topstep X chart for a little while. It should reconcile, but we're below the 200 moving average, below the 20 and the 50. I'm seeing some lows potentially in crude around 73, maybe 72.50 in that area. All right. What are your thoughts on trading overnight? Is it worth it? Like the 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. Eastern time is typically when I blow up all my combines, possibly from lack of volume. So Lito, that's a good question. I think there's a ton of opportunity to trade overnight, but it has to fit your trading style, right? I was on slow markets with Dakota on Wednesday. I took a trade in gold because there was volume, because I'm a volume trader, right? Dakota can trade level to level. It's how he learned how to read the markets. And it makes sense to him. He's comfortable holding on to trades. If that doesn't fit your personality, then you have to, take that into account, right? So maybe make that adjustment. Markets are markets, so, right? If you're able to identify levels and analyze levels, I think the one thing that's probably the biggest change between the two is being comfortable holding trades overnight, right? You just mentioned that it's lower volume. That lower volume may mean slower moves at times. So are you comfortable holding a trade 5-6 hours in order for the volume to do what it needs to do? You could also try to find markets that move overnight, right? Depending on what you're calling overnight, you mentioned, what was that, 10 p.m. to 8 a.m.? Look at this crude oil move, right? This is 4 a.m. Eastern time. It was the best move of the day. So the solution to that also may be finding a market that trades during those times. Maybe some of the currencies, right? Maybe some of the currencies would trade during that time. Let's look at the euro dollar, if I could pull it up. Right, here's today's the 16th. So here's the euro, right? This moved a little bit overnight in the overnight session. The ranges aren't going to be as big, right, for most of these markets, unless we get some kind of outlier move. The ranges aren't going to be as big, but that's just what you're accepting trading during those times. And then the times that they are, it's, a happy addition to your trading. And Aaron says, watch D in the London session. That's how you trade it, right? Figure out what D is doing. If you can, join her session. It's a great session. I've joined it a couple of times and rewatch it as well. But that's a way to figure it out as well. Coach Hoop, traded in a practice account, 100%. Anything you're going to add to your trading, whether it's a new market, it's trying out a different time frame, it's a different session that you're trading, try it in a practice account where there's no pressure to try to make money doing something that you haven't done before. I used to tell my basketball players all the time that frustration is earned. And what that means is, if you go in with the expectation of, hey, I'm trying this new market because I heard somebody else trade it before and I need to make money, and then you get upset that you didn't earn that, right? You got to put in the work in that market to say, hey, I understand how I should trade this. And now if you're not successful at it, then maybe you can be frustrated at your execution of it. But if it's something brand new, don't put that pressure on yourself to try to make money from it right away. Learn it first and then make the money afterwards, because that's gonna be how you pass your combines, how you get money in those XFAs and funded accounts, and then pull money out of the markets. Love you too, Lito. That XFA cap is for the life of the XFA. So if you make 50K in an XFA, you get moved over to live. All right. And I think that's it. It is Friday. Happy Friday, everybody. We're going to end the session in just a little bit. But just want to say thanks again to everyone for joining this week, for hanging out. See, we got 223 people here watching now on a Friday. Thanks again for watching. Make sure you do something off the charts this weekend. Try to have some fun off the charts. We work really hard at what we do here. So it's nice to reward yourself or just take a step back from what you're doing, so you can come back in with a fresh mindset next week. And if you do have to review at some point, spend the time to do that, right? Review how your week went, how you want your following week to go. I usually do mine on Sundays. And speaking of Sundays, maybe we just all do it together with Nick for a Tick. He has the Sunday market open at 4:45 Central Time. Nick is going to be running his session, just a market prep for the week. So maybe we do all of our market prep then. Have a great weekend. I will talk to you all next week, and we will see you soon. Thanks, everybody. Bye.